Awesome. Hey guys, like Felicia said, my name is Jessie Jennings and I'm a content creator here at Plaid. And I'm really excited to be kicking off the 12 days of card making with Michael. So today we'll be using our FolkArt paints and our Mod Podge. So I think a lot of people don't always think of paper crafting when they think of our paint, but you probably do when you think of Mod Podge. So I'm really excited to use these two products in conjunction to make some super cute and really bright and easy cards today for the first day of the 12 days of card making. Like Felicia said, I've got Dylan right across from me here in the studio, so he'll be reading the chat. If you've got any questions, Dylan can answer them or he can relay them to me and I'm happy to answer them here. We've got a few supplies here to get started. So I'm going to remind you guys of the supplies that was in the list that you'll need to make this card here today. So I've got my, excuse me, 5x7 blank card from Michael. So Michael's has a ton of really great and awesome like blank cards. They have like the note cards and the foldable cards like this one. This one here's a 5x7. It comes in a big pack with envelopes. So that's a card I'll be using today, but you can use whatever one you have. Like I said, I've got my FolkArt paints here. So the colors I'll be using are bright pink, new leaf green, and then I've got aqua or teal. So these are the colors I'm using, but feel free to substitute if you don't have these exact colors. Feel free to pick your own color palette as we go. I'm going to show you the techniques that I used here today, but you can use these techniques with, any colors that you like for your seasonal projects. I've also got my Mod Podge Matte here today. And this is the one that I like to use with paper because I like the idea of it all looking matte, but you can use gloss or satin. If you've got Mod Podge paper at home, that's obviously great too because it's acid free, but I'll be using our original Mod Podge Matte. I've got a few paint brushes here for my Mod Podge and we'll be doing a little bit of painting. So I've got a couple smaller round brushes and then a medium-sized flat brush. I have a pencil and a gold paint pen. You can use a gold paint pen or you can use gold paint. It's entirely up to you. I've got some yarn here. And in case you're running with the yarn is for, we're going to be making some of our own stamps, which is really fun. So it does not matter what kind of yarn you have. It doesn't matter the color of it. We just are going to be using the texture today. So I have like a very classic, I'm not really an expert on yarn, but like a very classic and traditional, size and texture of yarn. But whatever you've got at home that's like loose and extra, feel free to use that. I've got a few blocks of wood here. And like I said, we'll be making our own stamps today. So this is what I'm going to be using for that. Michael's has a really great wood section. And if you're like me, you don't have like power tools at home to be cutting your own wood. So if you've got something, hanging around the house, like a piece of cardboard or, a lid from a box or, an eraser or whatever you've got that's like kind of rectangular. Or Michael's has lots of great little surface selections in their wood aisle. So they have lots of great little findings and turnings and pieces and things like that. So feel free to grab something like that. But I just have a few little wooden squares here today that I'm going to be using. And then I've got some colorful paper here. Of course, for making cards, we're going to need our paper. So I think I listed in the supplies list just like a pack of colorful paper, like a kind of a rainbow book of paper, but whatever you've got at home, if you've got, I'm sure if you're a paper crafter, you've got your own stash at home of patterns and colors and things like that. So whatever you want to use for your cards, but we will be painting on the paper. So I kind of do recommend it be a solid color if you've got it. I grabbed some parchment paper just because I always like to have it on hand when I'm Mod Podging. It is not mandatory by any means. If you've got like a napkin or something, that's fine too. Or wax paper, tin foil, anything like that is great. Again, we've got a lot here today, guys. I've got some scissors, of course, for cutting our paper. And then just like the typical crafting things, I've got some water to clean my brushes, paper towels, and then something to put my paint on. So just sort of some of the standard side or the standard craft things that you'll always kind of need on hand when you're crafting. So I know that was kind of a lot. So let me know if you have any questions about the supplies and I'd be happy to answer them before we get started. So just feel free to pop those in the chat real quick and Dylan can let me know or he can answer them himself. But like I said, I know it was a bunch, so I'm happy to answer.
One kind of interesting thing, I don't think we've ever had anyone from the town of Cut and Shoot, Texas.
Cut and Shoot, Texas. Wow, welcome. Never heard of it.
Some of the history of the name of Cut and Shoot. So that was the first one. That's Diane joining us.
Oh, well, welcome, Diane. Thanks for coming. We learn something new every day. That's an interesting name. Okay, well, cool. So I know it's kind of early for Christmas. I am excited. We were joking, Dylan and I, earlier about how we just had Halloween and like we came home from Halloween last night. And we were like, whoop, time for Christmas. But I know a lot of people like to get their card making done early because you may have a lot to do. So I am excited to be crafting for Christmas. You can see I'm on my Christmas set here today. So I'm excited to get started. Okay, so the first step for making these cards is we're going to make our own patterned paper. So to do that, we're going to start by making our stamps. So like I said, I've got these little wood blocks here. And again, you can get these from Michael's. They have lots of little, wood surfaces. If you do have access to a shop at home, cut up some scrap wood, easy peasy. But you can use, like I said, any sort of small rectangle you have at home, whether it's like, you kind of want it to be harder. So I don't know if a sponge would be great. You want that like firmness for what we're going to be doing. But if you've got like an eraser or a box lid or cardboard even might work, anything like that, feel free to use it. So I'm going to grab some of my yarn and I'm going to cut off just a string of it. I'm not really going to measure it. We're going to kind of eyeball because you can always add more. So I've got a little strand of yarn here, about this much. And I'm going to start by wrapping this around my wood block. So I'm going to hold it with my thumb and I'm going to start wrapping and I'm going to cover that up to kind of tuck it under there. I'm just wrapping. And if you can imagine, this is what's going to make the pattern on our paper. So you want it to be kind of random. So you get this like fun, sort of like a zigzag effect. So I'm going to keep kind of going back and forth. So I don't want to go like just in a straight line. I kind of want to keep going around and around and back and forth. And then when I'm done, you can tuck it under and you can add more yarn if you want to. So it should look something like this.
As you do that, someone just commented that they refer to that the whole fall season in their family from September 1st to December 31st as back to Hallow Thanksmas.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna make another one in case you guys missed that. I'm just gonna grab another piece of yarn. And again, the color of the yarn doesn't matter. And I'm going to grab it with my thumb and kind of pin it down. And I'm going to wrap it around. And I kind of want to go like back and forth to get that sort of like zigzag pattern and make it nice and random. You can do as much or as little yarn as you want. This is how we're going to get that fun texture. And then I'm going to tuck it in on the back. You could, dab it with hot glue or something if you wanted to, but you don't need to. You can just tuck it as long as it's on there nice and sturdy. And this is what's going to act as our stamps. So any questions about that, Dylan?
No, we just had one. How tight are you wrapping it? And I said relatively loose just to stay on the block.
Yeah, just kind of as tight as you can so it doesn't pop off.
Yeah. Because
we're going to be putting paint on there and using this as our stamp. So just, you want to make sure it doesn't unravel when we go to paint with it. But as you can see here, I just love the idea of using household objects as stamps. I've been seeing a lot of like people making linoleum stamps and doing a lot of carving on Instagram and on Pinterest, lately in this year, which I love. I think that's so fun. But just keep in mind, you don't have to get, a carving tool and a wood block or a piece of linoleum or rubber or whatever it is to make a stamp. You can use what you have at home. So, we've got some scrap wood and some yarn here. You can use plastic forks. You can use corrugated cardboard. You can use bubble wrap. I mean, there's so many things you already have in your house you can use to get really fun and unique textures to make papers that you can't find at the store, to make papers that are really unique just for your paper crafting. So they'll be one of a kind. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's so many ways to be creative with just things you already have at your house to make stamps with. So that's why I just kind of love this idea. All right. So we're going to keep on going. I'm going to grab some of my paper here. I've got some pink paper and we are going to make sort of a fun grid pattern on this. So I'm going to grab my teal and put it onto my palette. And I'm going to grab my flat brush. And you want to be kind of quick because acrylic paint does dry fairly quickly. You want to be able to transfer it onto our paper while it's still very wet. So I'm going to start applying my acrylic paint and you want to be fairly generous with it too. You don't want it to be like globbed on there because then you won't get that texture coming through, but you want to make sure that you have enough on there where it's very wet so that it transfers well when we go to put it onto our paper. So you can see here, I have a good amount of paint on there, not too much where it's like dripping off, but it's very, very wet. Okay. So now what I'm going to do now that I've got it loaded is I'm going to start over here on the left and I'm going to press down. Make sure you have it pressed down nice and firm. I'm going to pull up and we get a really fun pattern. And then what I'm going to do, so I did it, vertically there with the strings going up and down. I'm going to go next to it, but I'm going to turn it horizontally and I'm going to press down. So we're going to get this really fun grid pattern. See that there? And you can keep going. I'm going to go back to vertical. We're going to keep going and load your stamp back up as needed. So probably every 3 to 4 times, depending on how much paint you put on there, is when you're going to have to load back up. And the yarn really absorbs the paint, which is nice because it's very porous. So it kind of traps the paint in there like a paintbrush would. So you don't have to really load it up very often, which is nice, especially if you're kind of an impatient crafter like I am. So I'm going to load it up again. I'm going to add a little more paint and I'm going to keep going with my pattern. So I did horizontally. So now I'm going to go vertically and I'm going to press down. And we're going to keep going down here. So now I went vertically up there. So I'm going to go horizontally beneath it, just so I have that every other sort of checkerboard look. And like I said, you can do this with a plastic fork. You can get the same sort of, stripey look. You can do this with corrugated cardboard. You can pull it in half and expose that corrugation in the middle and do a similar kind of look. There's a lot of different ways you can create really fun patterns using household items.
We also had a suggestion to use hot glue on your block as a texture.
Oh, I love that idea. Great idea. You can make all kinds of patterns with hot glue. It doesn't even have to be stripes. You could do letters, if you have a steady hand. You could do hearts and all kinds of fun stuff. Smiley faces. I love that idea. All right, we're just going to keep on going. So we have a nice full pattern to work with when we go to start cutting and Mod Podging our paper onto our card. And if you press down hard, you really can get that paint out of the yarn because it's so spongy. And I kind of like that it looks random too. I kind of like that none of them are the same. I think that's a really fun sort of like organic look, that they're not perfect and some are thicker than others. I think that's really fun. See, you can see as I have less paint in my stamp, they're getting thinner lines, which are nice. And then when I started, the lines were thicker. So you can kind of play with that a little bit too. And as you practice, you can kind of, come to see how much paint in your stamp will create different thicknesses in your lines. So you can kind of, manipulate it to how you like it to look. Keep going with my grid. Okay. All right. So, and you can hang on to this. And now I can hang on to the stamp when it dries. You can put a new color on it. You don't have to wash it or anything like that. I wouldn't bother. But you can hang on to this for the next time you want to make some paper for your next paper crafting project. So we're going to want to let this dry. And while our paper dries, we're going to move on to our card because we're going to do a little bit of painting on our card before we add the Mod Podge. So I'm going to set this aside so it can dry fully. And now what we're going to do is we're going to paint this tree branch because there was 2 cards in the picture and both use very similar techniques. This one just has like different shapes of paper, while this one has a little bit of hand painting. So I'm going to show you how I did this card in particular, because once you learn how to do this one, you'll be able to see how this one was done easily. So I'm going to show you how to paint that cute little tree branch that our ornaments are going to be hanging from. So I got my 5x7 card here and I'm going to be doing mine vertically, as you can see. You can do it horizontally if you want. It's totally up to you. First, I'm going to clean my brush. What am I doing? You never want to leave acrylic paint on your brushes. That's a good way to not have brushes anymore. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my brush. Okay. So we need a little bit of paint on our palette. We need our teal color or aqua, whatever it is you have. So I have that on my palette already. And then I'm going to put some of my new leaf green. And these are the 2 colors we're going to use to paint our tree branch. So I'm going to grab one of my thin brushes. So this is just a small, like a liner brush or a small round brush. And it's just so you can paint really thin lines and really different size lines. So we're going to be painting fairly thin ones. And I'm going to load my brush with some of my new leaf green. So this lime green color. And then I'm going to start by painting a line where I want my tree branch to be. So just very lightly, you can use a pencil for this part too if you feel a little intimidated, it's up to you. I just want to paint a line starting from the left and going towards the right, but not going all the way. We're going to stop before we get to the end. I'm just going to try to, do it as steadily as I can, but it doesn't do perfect because we're going to paint over this. We just want a good idea of where that branch is going to be. And I'm going to stop about there. Can you guys see that? So really just a thin line to kind of mark where that branch is going to be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my card because I'm going to start painting like pine needles on this branch, and it's going to be easier to pull down than try to like go from right to left, especially if you're right-handed. This is better whether you're right-handed or left-handed, but it's going to be easier to pull down on your brush as opposed to like trying to do it sideways. So I'm going to pick up some of my new leaf green on my brush, and then I'm going to dab it in a little bit of my teal, and I'm going to mix those into a little more new leaf green, because what we want is a variety, sort of a mix of these two colors every time we make a brush stroke. You don't want to have one color or the other, and that's how we're going to get this really pretty sort of variation in the color that makes it look a little more realistic. So I'm going to start at the top of my branch here. I'm going to start with one sort of little pine needle, and I'm going to pull down, putting very little pressure on my brush. I need to hold it up a little, Dylan.
Sure.
That help. So very little pressure. And then I'm going to do one on the left, very little pressure, and then one on the right. And we're going to start building up these pine needles, going all the way down our branch on the left and on the right. And add a little more paint to your brush as needed. And we're going to go all the way down our branch. You can fill in right now, or you can go back and kind of fill in some of those gaps later. But we're pulling down from the left, making sort of a little V shape. And on the right, on the left, and on the right. And you always want a different amount of your lime green and your teal on your brush, because that's going to give you that pretty variation. Left and right. And keep going all the way down this branch. So now that you've got it filled in, you've got the whole thing covered. We want to go back and add a few more little pine needles just in between to make it look fuller. So I'm going to start by like doing a little more teal on the left side and a little more of my new leaf green on the right side, just so I like the way that it looks like from going dark to light. So to kind of show you what I mean. So I'm going to grab some teal, and I'm going to go back in with some more kind of just overlapping the ones you've already done and adding some in between so it looks nice and full. You can do some in the middle so it looks like they're in the front. And then I'll pick up some more new leaf green and keep working my way up there. Make sure it's pretty varied, because it wouldn't be perfect in real life if we were really looking at a pine tree. It would be very natural looking and kind of random. And I'm going to keep going up, and I'm going to be adding, like I said, more new leaf green so it gets a little lighter as I go up. So you have a really cute little tree branch for our ornaments to hang from. So pretty simple. I know a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by having to hand paint. And I know if you're a paper crafter, you may or may not be used to hand painting, but this is a really simple way to add like a very personalized touch to your card making. Hand painted by you. Okay. So now that is dry, we're going to go back and we're going to check on our paper. Acrylic paint dries super quick, so this actually should be pretty dry by now. If not, you want to give it a little fan or maybe take your hair dryer to it and just make sure it's fully dry. I did a few pieces of paper ahead of time just to make sure that we could get it all done within the class time. So this is just, the exact same technique we did. I did some pink on yellow, I did my teal on the pink here, like I just showed you. And then I did my new leaf green on some teal paper. So just a variety of colors. You can do all the same color if you wanted to. You can pick your own colors. It's totally up to you. But these are the ones that I'm going to use for my card. All right. So the next step for making our card is cutting out our ornament shapes. And if you, like I said, if you're a big paper crafter, you probably have some circle cutters at home or circle stencils at home, which is excellent. But if you're like me and you're used to mostly painting, you don't do a lot of paper crafting, you don't have those. So I am always looking around for circles to trace. So sometimes I'll use a roll of tape. Sometimes I will use the lid of a cup or the mouth of a cup. For these particular ornaments, I know you guys all have it because I used the lid from my Mod Podge jar. So we are going to take our Mod Podge lid and make sure that it's pretty clean. You don't want to get too much Mod Podge on your paper. And this is going to be what we're going to use as our template for our ornaments for the cards. We can all make sure we have the exact same size ornaments because we all have our Mod Podge for the class. So that being said, let me set this aside so I don't mess it up. We're gonna go ahead and trace some circles out from these papers. So I got my pencil here, and you can kind of pick strategically if there's a certain area of your pattern that you liked how it came out the best. So, you know, you wanted like the corner maybe where like they meet, or maybe one stamp looks the best to you and you want to use one's thinner or thicker. You can be strategic about where you choose your circle from. So I'm gonna say maybe here. And I'm going to trace this with my pencil. And I'm gonna do the same thing for all three of my papers. Oops, I missed an edge. And then my third one. Let's do here. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut those out with our scissors. Like I said, if you've got like circle cutters at home, that obviously like circle punches, that would make this a lot simpler. But if not, it is no big deal. We'll just carefully cut these. All right, got my one. Of course, since you handmade this paper, you could totally save this, stick it in your paper stash and use it for another project. Or use it to make, you know, a set of cards, kind of like I have here that are coordinating. Or you can go ahead and kind of make these in bulk. Make this your Christmas card for the year and make a bunch of these at a time. Like I said, especially if you've got the tools for it, those paper punches, just boom, boom, boom. You can make a ton of these and they're all handmade. It'd be really special to receive this from a friend, I think. And knowing that they really put all of their, you know, hard work and love into it. I think that's the best kind of gift. I also kind of like too for Christmas that this pattern kind of reminds me of like pine needles or like tree branches. It's kind of like echoes that pattern, which I think is fun. How's everybody doing out there, Dylan?
I think we're doing good.
Good.
Oh yeah, people were saying if you wanted to add some extra texture on top of your painting, I guess you could do hot glue and then put some glitter over it.
Oh, love.
Or you can use your Mod Podge.
Love
put a
that.
little bit of Mod Podge on your ornaments and put some glitter on them that way.
We love glitter. I'm just going to remove some of these pencil lines with my erasers. It'll come off really easily from the acrylic paint. Make sure it's nice and clean. Okay. All right, so I've got my 3 ornaments here that I'm going to put on my Christmas card. So to add a little festive touch to this, you know, I felt like it was pretty, but I want it to be like maybe a little more glam, a little more festive for Christmas. So we're going to take our paint pen. I've got a gold paint pen here from Michaels. Michaels has a great paint pen selection. So whatever, you know, brand you like to use. And I'm going to dab the edges of this paper. So it doesn't need to be perfect. You can kind of see here in my finished one, it's not perfect, which I kind of like that look. It almost looks like the edges are like gilded. But we're going to go around our paper here and kind of just color that edge with the gold paint pen. And that'll make it really pop off of the white card when we Mod Podge it on in a few minutes. It's a really quick way to make it stand out. I know this is a lot of paper crafters will like ink the edges of their papers when they're, you know, paper crafting. So this is kind of reminds you of that similar technique, but just using a paint pen. You can also just use paint for this if you wanted to. Just take, you know, paint on your paintbrush and kind of just graze the edge of that paper. You'll get a really similar effect. You wanted to use some Treasure Golds. Well, that's one of our FolkArt paints, which is an awesome formula of paint. If you've not tried it, I highly recommend it. I'm just kind of holding the middle so I don't get too much paint pen on my hands. There's always going to be some, but try to avoid it as much as possible. And like I said, this is really just going to make these shapes pop off of our card when we put them on in a little bit. I just love the way it looks.
So we have a suggestion that someone wanted to make gift bags with this technique, and that'd be cool.
Oh, I
Gift
love that.
tags.
I love that idea. You could totally do this right on the front of a gift bag. Michaels has really great blank gift bags too. They have like the brown ones and the white ones and all kinds of colors. That would be beautiful on a gift bag. I love that idea. And then you could reuse it really. It can kind of be, I love the idea of like gift bags being passed on and on and on and used over and over. So I love that. Okay. So now we are kind of ready to assemble our card. So make sure these dry a little bit. You don't want them to be like too super duper wet because you don't want to smear them. But just like the acrylic paint, the paint pens dry pretty quick. So we've got our card here that we've painted our pretty tree branch on. And we've got our ornaments here that we've just added some gold to. So now I'm going to grab some parchment paper. If you've got like a silicone mat, wax paper, whatever it is that you have on hand for crafting, tin foil, like whatever you've got is fine. I'm just doing it so I don't get Mod Podge all over my surface when I'm putting the Mod Podge on. So I'm going to start with my pink one because I'm going to put that one on top. And I am going to grab my medium-sized brush and some of my Mod Podge Matte, and I'm going to put a nice, even coat of Mod Podge on the back of this. And you don't need a ton, especially when you're doing paper to paper. A little bit of Mod Podge goes a long way. You just want to make sure you have it fully coated and evenly spread. You do not need to like put a whole ton of Mod Podge on there because that's when you're going to run into like Mod Podge pouring out of the sides and kind of bubbling and stuff like that. So especially for paper crafting, you want to make sure that you're being pretty frugal with your Mod Podge application. You see shiny just enough to cover that surface. And then I'm going to place it where I want it on my card. So right up here. And I'm going to grab another piece of parchment paper to press it down just because I'm kind of working fast and I want to make sure I don't smear that gold if it's still a little wet. But you can use your fingers if you're certain that your gold edges are dry, you can absolutely use your fingers to just press this down. But I'm going to use some parchment paper just to be on the safer side. So we're going kind of quickly. I'm going to repeat that process for your other two ornaments as well. You can kind of lay them out too to make sure you've got room if you need to. Make sure you're not, because you want to put a little in the bottom too. So always good to plan ahead. Measure twice, cut once, right? So again, really thin coat, just enough so you have a nice even coat on the whole piece. You don't want to miss any edges because those are going to pop up later. You want to make sure the whole thing is fully covered. Press it down. I've got my parchment. We've got a brayer that works for this too. That's great. Then my third one. Yeah, nice and thin. Put it down. I'm going to leave some room for a message at the bottom of mine. down. And I love using Mod Podge like with paper to paper. It's super satisfying because it adheres so smooth and so beautifully. Let's just put that in my drinking water. Okay. So you can see we are moving right along with our card here. So like I said, when I was making this card, I really felt like I wanted to include a Christmas message, somewhere to personalize it, say who the card's for, Merry Christmas, you know, Happy Holidays, whatever you might be making this card for. So I put a little bit of torn paper here at the bottom. So I'll show you how I do that. Nothing crazy. But I took a little bit of my pink here and I tore it. So I got a little bit of a rough edge there. I have my little torn paper, and then I picked the edge that I liked best and I Mod Podged it down, and then I cut the excess off later on because that just made it easier so I don't have to measure it and cut it out. This is just a much easier way to do it. So maybe I'll do, can't decide. I guess I'll do there. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of Mod Podge onto the back of this, where it's going to go on my card. Use this guy. We're gonna press it down. And again, it doesn't matter if it matches up with the edge because we're gonna trim it. Press down, make sure you got it. I think I missed a little edge here, so I'm gonna add some more Mod Podge. Okay, sure it's down. And then I'll take my scissors and I'll just trim that excess there. Much easier than having to measure it ahead of time, which you definitely could do that as well. So I have a cute little area that I can put my Christmas message. I'm just going to use my paint pen and I'll stick with my original message of merry and bright. You can put, you know, your family name. You can put Merry Christmas. You can put whatever it is that you want to include in your card. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to use this paint pen to add a few more little details to our card. So I'm just going to do little rectangles for the ornament hangers with my paint pen and fill those in. So they're hanging from something. And they're, of course, me hanging from the branch. So I'm going to do some strings hanging down. And then I still felt like I needed something just because, you know, crafters never know when to stop. So the last thing I did for my cards was I splattered them with my paint pen. So I'm going to move things out of the way because this part can get a little messy, but it's kind of one of my favorite things to do with the paint pen. Of course, you can just use paint and a paintbrush to splatter, but I thought this would be fun. I'll try not to get it on Dylan's camera equipment. It's giving me a nervous look. Okay, so I'll do a little practice. You can just splatter with your paint pen right on your card. Isn't that cute? I love the way that looks. So now you have a super festive, super fun, super personalized Christmas card that you can mail to your friends, give to your family. I love the idea of putting it on a gift bag or making a gift tag with it. But yeah, super fun, super easy.
Can we see it close up?
Yeah, totally. And then, like I said, I had that second card in that kind of coordinates, and it's all the same techniques. So it's the paper. I just kind of filled half the card with it. It's a circle, probably a roll of tape that I traced, and then a little square where I wrote joy and then splattered on it as well. So it's a really cute little set. There's so many different ways you can use all of these techniques. So that's it, guys. I hope you had so much fun. Again, for this craft, we used Mod Podge and FolkArt paint. I really hope you enjoyed this. I'm so excited that I got to kick off the 12 days of card making with Michaels. As always, if you enjoyed this class and you decide to use some of these techniques or make this card, please make sure to hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Plaid Crafts, because we love to see what you guys are making and we get so inspired by you. We are here on the Michaels channel every Monday night. If you didn't know, we do a paint night live with Michaels. So every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we do a full painting in just about an hour, and it's super beginner friendly. So if you've never painted before, we would love to have you. And then we also do a lot of craft classes during the week. So keep an eye out for more plaid crafts classes, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.